I took my kids to holiday brunch, and my father humiliated them in front of everyone. Then I froze the family card and watched their entire world collapse. I never thought I'd be posting here, but I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating at me for months. This is a long one, so grab some coffee. I, 37, male, divorced for about 4 years now. I used to work in construction project management for a mid-sized company, pulling down decent money and thinking I had life figured out. Then my ex-wife Sarah decided she wanted the exciting life with some fitness influencer she met at the gym, a guy who barely owned furniture but had six-pack abs and a social media following. The divorce was messy, expensive, and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about loyalty. These days, I run my own small contracting business, specializing in home renovations and small commercial projects. It's not glamorous work, crawling around in attics, dealing with stubborn clients, and constantly bidding against guys who lowball just to get work. But it's honest. It pays the bills, and I'm building something that's mine. I raise my 2 kids half the week. Emma, 12, who's smart as a whip and wants to be a marine biologist. And Jake, 10, who can build anything with his hands and has the sweetest heart you've ever seen. I don't live fancy. My house is a modest 3-bedroom ranch that I've been slowly renovating myself. We drive reliable used cars, shop at warehouse stores, and our idea of a big night out is going to the local diner for burgers and shakes. But I've worked my tail off, saved smart, and I'm genuinely proud of what I've built without anyone's safety net. Every dollar in my account came from my own sweat and smart decisions. My family, though, that's a whole different story. And honestly, I should have seen this coming years ago. My dad was career military, 23 years in the Army, starting as an enlisted man and working his way up to sergeant major. He's the kind of strict, controlling guy who thinks showing emotion is weakness and giving compliments will somehow make you soft. He brought that drill sergeant energy home every single day, treating family dinner like morning formation and critiquing everything from how we sat to how we chewed our food. Growing up, I don't think I ever heard him say he was proud of me. Even when I graduated high school with honors or landed my first job, his idea of praise was, "You didn't screw that up too badly." My mom, Linda, plays the sweet, caring matriarch role when people are watching. But behind closed doors, she's got guilt tripping down to an Olympic sport. She can make you feel terrible about decisions you haven't even made yet. Her favorite phrases include, "I just worry about you and I only want what's best for the family," which are usually code for, "Do what I want or I'll make you feel guilty for weeks." She's mastered the art of the dramatic sigh and the wounded expression that somehow makes you apologize for things that aren't your fault. Then there's my sister, Vanessa, 31, who's been living like she's starring in some reality show since she turned 18. She's undeniably beautiful, the kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room. And she's used that to coast through life, expecting other people to handle the messy details like rent and grocery bills. Always has the newest iPhone, designer handbags that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, perfect acrylic nails that get touched up twice a week, and somehow manages to look like she just stepped off a magazine cover even when she rolls out of bed. The catch? She can't pay her rent on time to save her life and has been between jobs for longer than some people have entire careers. Her last actual employment was a part-time receptionist position at a hair salon 3 years ago, which she quit because they expected her to work weekends and answer phones instead of posting on social media. Since then, she's had a series of opportunities that never quite pan out: MLM schemes, attempts at becoming an influencer, and brief stints as an assistant to various guys she's dated who needed someone to organize their lives. My younger brother, Ryan, is 27 and considers himself an entrepreneur, which apparently means having more failed business ventures than actual jobs on his resume. He's the type who watches one motivational video about passive income and thinks he's discovered the secret to wealth. Every few months, he's got some new scheme that's going to make him rich: drop shipping, cryptocurrency trading, flipping houses with no money down, starting a food truck, launching a cleaning service, creating an app. The common thread is that all these ventures require other people's money to get started and somehow never generate enough revenue to pay back the initial investment. Ryan's got this way of talking about his businesses like they're legitimate enterprises, even though most of them exist only in his head or last about 6 weeks before he moves on to the next get-rich-quick scheme. He throws around terms like scaling and market penetration and disrupting the industry, but he's never actually completed a business plan or filed for proper licensing. His idea of market research is watching YouTube videos and reading success stories on social media. Anyway, every December, They do this big family holiday brunch thing. It's supposed to be this wholesome tradition where we all come together and celebrate the season. In reality, it's usually just an excuse for everyone to show off and make passive-aggressive comments about each other's life choices. This year, I showed up with Emma and Jake. All of us dressed in our nicest clothes. I'd even ironed their shirts myself and made sure Jake's hair was combed properly. You know how kids that age can look like they stuck their finger in an electrical socket if you're not careful? The kids had been excited for weeks, talking about seeing their grandparents and cousins, planning what they'd say and do. They'd even prepared gifts, which honestly made my heart swell with pride. Jake had spent hours after school for 3 weeks in shop class, building this little wooden clock for Grandma. He'd sanded it down with progressively finer grits until it was smooth as silk, then stained it this beautiful cherry color and hand-painted the numbers. The kid was so meticulous about it, measuring everything twice and asking his teacher for help with the battery-powered movement. When he brought it home, he wrapped it himself in newspaper and tied it with string because he'd spent his allowance on the materials. Emma had saved up her allowance money for 2 months. Every dollar from helping with dishes, folding laundry, and keeping her room clean, to buy Grandpa a coffee mug that said "Best Granddad" in bright blue letters. She'd walked to 3 different stores to find just the right one, rejecting mugs that said "World's Greatest" or #1 because she wanted something that felt more personal. They were both so proud of those gifts, practically bouncing with excitement as we walked up to the front door, Jake clutching his newspaper-wrapped package and Emma carrying a small gift bag with tissue paper. The moment we stepped inside, I knew something was off. It wasn't just the sudden quiet, though that was definitely noticeable. It was the way everyone's eyes shifted. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you can tell people were just talking about you? It was that, but amplified. The whole table went dead silent. Not the good kind of quiet where people are happy to see you arrive, but that uncomfortable, pregnant silence that happens when everyone's been discussing your personal business right before you show up. My dad was sitting at the head of the table in his usual spot, wearing the same stern expression he'd perfected during his army years. He looked like he was presiding over a court-martial rather than a family gathering. Vanessa was half paying attention, scrolling through her phone while simultaneously checking her reflection in the camera app. She barely glanced up when we came in, just gave us a little finger wave like we were interrupting something important. Ryan was slouched in his chair, looking uncomfortable, probably hoping we'd provide enough distraction that no one would ask him about his latest business venture. My mom hurried over with that fake bright smile she puts on when she's trying to smooth over tension, the one that doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, good. You're here. We were just talking about you." I'm sure you were, I thought. But I just smiled and helped the kids get settled. The dining room was set up with my mom's good china and cloth napkins, the way she always did for special occasions. There were platters of food on the side table, her famous cinnamon rolls, scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh fruit arranged artistically in a big wooden bowl. It should have been warm and welcoming, but the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken tension. Jake immediately broke away from me and ran over to my dad with his gift. His whole face lit up with pure, innocent excitement. This kid who'd worked so hard, who'd been so careful and thoughtful, practically glowing with pride. "Grandpa, I made this for you in shop class. It took me 3 weeks. He thrust the newspaper-wrapped package toward my dad, bouncing on his toes with anticipation. My dad barely glanced at the offering. He didn't reach for it, didn't even lean forward to get a better look, just stared at Jake with this expression of mild annoyance, like a 10-year-old's homemade gift was somehow an inconvenience. Jake's smile started to falter, but he kept holding the package out, thinking maybe his grandfather just hadn't heard him properly. "I made the numbers by hand," Jake continued, his voice a little quieter now, but still hopeful. "And I picked the color because Mom said you like wood that's darker." My dad cut him off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "That's nice, son," he said in a tone that made it clear he thought it was anything but nice. Then he looked directly at me, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was about to make a point, and my children were going to be collateral damage. "You know, David," he said, in that cold, measured tone he used when he was about to deliver what he considered important wisdom, "your presence always makes things more complicated around here. Family gatherings run a lot smoother when it's just the core family. Honestly, you probably should have just stayed home today." The room went absolutely dead silent. Emma stopped mid-step on her way to hug Grandma, her gift bag still clutched in her small hands. Jake's face fell so fast it was like watching a balloon deflate. This sweet, innocent kid who'd worked so hard on a gift for his grandfather, who'd been excited for weeks about this day, and this was the reception he got. The newspaper-wrapped clock slipped from his hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. Vanessa actually smirked, not even trying to hide it, and took a deliberate sip of her orange juice like she was watching some entertaining drama unfold on television. Ryan just stared at his plate, probably relieved that for once he wasn't the target of criticism. My mom made a small gasping sound but didn't say anything to defend us. But it was Jake's quiet little voice that really broke my heart and made my decision for me. He looked up at me with those confused 10-year-old eyes, his lower lip starting to tremble, and asked in the smallest voice imaginable, "Daddy, why doesn't Grandpa want us here? Did we do something wrong?" That was it. Something inside me snapped clean in half. I'd spent years making excuses for my family's behavior, telling myself they didn't mean it the way it sounded, that I should be the bigger person and just let things slide. But watching my son, this wonderful, kind, creative kid, get his heart broken by his own grandfather over a gift he'd made with love was the final straw. I put my hand on Jake's shoulder, feeling the tension in his small frame, and said loud enough for everyone at that table to hear, "We're leaving right now." "David, wait," my mom started, finally finding her voice, but I was already helping the kids gather their coats. "Come on, guys," I said, trying to keep my voice steady for their sake. "Let's go get some lunch somewhere people actually want to see us." Emma picked up Jake's fallen gift and handed it to him without a word. Smart kid. She understood more about what had just happened than she should have had to. We walked right back out that front door, leaving a table full of shocked faces behind us, along with all the fancy food and fake family warmth. The drive home was quiet. Both kids probably trying to process what had just happened. Jake held his wooden clock in his lap, staring down at it like he was wondering what he'd done wrong. Emma kept looking out the window, unusually subdued for a girl who normally chattered non-stop about everything she saw. I felt terrible that they'd been caught in the crossfire of whatever my family's problem was with me. But I was also proud that I'd finally stood up for us, instead of just taking it like I always had. For the first time in years, I had chosen my children's dignity over keeping the peace. Back home, the kids disappeared into their rooms, Emma to read and Jake to work on a Lego set. I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone, replaying the whole scene in my head and getting angrier by the minute, not just about what happened, but about how long I'd been letting it happen. Then I remembered something that made my blood pressure spike even higher. There's this joint family account I'd set up years ago, back when I thought I was being helpful and building stronger family bonds. The idea was that we'd all contribute to it for genuine emergencies. You know, if someone's car broke down unexpectedly, or there was a medical bill, or someone needed help with unexpected home repairs, it seemed like a smart way for us to support each other without anyone having to feel embarrassed about asking for help. In reality, it had become their personal spending account, and I was the only one putting money into it. What started as me contributing $200 a month just in case had gradually escalated to $400, then $600. As the emergencies became more frequent and expensive, I kept telling myself it was temporary, that eventually everyone would start contributing their fair share, but somehow it never worked out that way. I pulled up the banking app on my phone and started scrolling through the recent transactions, really looking at them for the first time instead of just glancing at the notifications and assuming everything was legitimate. The pattern that emerged made my stomach churn. Over $1,200 had gone out in just the last 2 weeks alone, urgent groceries for $200, which was laughable considering Vanessa's idea of cooking was heating up frozen meals, and Ryan lived on fast food and energy drinks. When they did buy groceries, it was always name-brand everything, organic produce they'd let rot in the fridge, and expensive pre-made meals that cost 3 times what it would take to cook from scratch. Car maintenance for $400. Another joke. Ryan's truck hadn't seen the inside of a legitimate garage in months because he couldn't afford proper repairs. Instead, he'd take it to quick lube places and buy whatever additives and treatments the sales guys convinced him he needed, or he'd order random parts online and attempt repairs himself using YouTube videos. The $400 probably went towards some gadget he was convinced would fix his engine problems without actually addressing the underlying issues. Emergency dental work for $300. The timing was suspicious because it happened the same week Vanessa posted photos of her fresh eyelash extensions and new acrylic nail set. I'd learned to recognize her emergencies by now. They always seemed to coincide with sales at her favorite makeup store, or when she needed money for whatever social event she'd committed to attending. Utility assistance for $150 for my parents' house, even though my dad's military pension combined with my mother's part-time job at the local library should have been more than enough to cover their modest monthly bills. But somehow there were always unexpected expenses, usually related to Ryan's projects that required extra electricity or water, or my mom's tendency to keep the house at whatever temperature felt most comfortable regardless of the cost. Medical copay for $75. Legitimate enough on its face, except I happened to know my parents had excellent insurance through the VA. Most of their medical expenses were covered completely, and the few copays they had were usually less than $20. This was probably Ryan using their insurance card for something he should have handled himself. The list went on and on: pizza delivery charges when someone was too sick to cook, gas money for job interviews that never seemed to materialize into actual employment, books and supplies for Ryan's latest online course that was going to teach him the secrets of real estate investing or forex trading or whatever scheme he discovered that week. I'd been blind to it for so long, making excuses and assuming the best about everyone's motives. But sitting there in my quiet kitchen, scrolling through months of these transactions, it became crystal clear I wasn't helping them through tough times or providing a safety net for legitimate emergencies. I was financing their entire lifestyle while they treated me like garbage and my children like inconveniences. The worst part was realizing how they'd trained me to not ask questions. Whenever I'd expressed concern about the frequency of withdrawals, I'd gotten guilt trips about not trusting family, or lectures about how lucky I was to be in a position to help others, or reminders of times when they'd supposedly helped me, which, now that I thought about it, were few and far between, and usually involved helping that came with strings attached. I opened the app settings and froze the card. Just like that, with one tap of my finger, their free ride was over. The account would stay open. I wasn't trying to cause problems with automatic payments or anything vindictive like that, but no new charges would go through until I personally approved them. The silence that followed felt profound. For the first time in years, I knew that my money was actually my money, sitting safely in accounts that I controlled, available for my children's needs and our family's real emergencies. The phone started buzzing within an hour. First Ryan, then Vanessa, then my mom. Text after text flooding in, but not one of them asked why we'd left brunch early. Not one person seemed concerned about how their words had affected my children. It was all variations of the same panic. The card's not working. We can't pay for this. What's wrong with the account? I turned the phone face down and went to check on the kids. They were both doing okay, but I could tell they were still processing what had happened. We ordered pizza and watched movies for the rest of the evening, and gradually their spirits lifted. But I kept thinking about that moment when Jake asked why his grandfather didn't want him there. And I knew something fundamental had shifted in me. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat down and really looked at my finances for the first time in months. The numbers were sobering. Over the past year, I'd given or loaned my family over $8,000. $8,000 that could have gone toward the kids, college funds, or a family vacation, or just building up our emergency savings. Instead, it had paid for Vanessa's lifestyle and Ryan's pipe dreams while they made jokes about my simple life and treated my children like inconveniences. The next morning, I made bacon and eggs for Emma and Jake. They were still a little subdued, probably worried they'd done something wrong at brunch. I assured them they were perfect and that sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with kids. Then my phone rang. Vanessa's name popped up on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to hear what she had to say about yesterday. "Hey," she said, and her tone was so casual and breezy that I actually expected her to ask about the kids, or at least acknowledge what had happened yesterday. Instead, she launched right into business. "So, rent's due today, and Mom mentioned you froze the family card for some reason. I figured you could probably just cover my rent directly, since the card thing is obviously some kind of technical glitch or whatever." I literally had to hold the phone away from my ear and look at it to make sure I'd heard correctly. She was calling me like I was her personal bank, like yesterday's humiliation of my children was just some minor inconvenience that we'd all gotten past. "Vanessa," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice level. "Did you call to talk about what happened yesterday at brunch? What about yesterday?" "Oh, you mean the whole dad thing?" She sounded genuinely puzzled, like she couldn't understand why I'd bring it up. "Look, you know how Dad gets sometimes. He was probably just having one of his moods. You shouldn't take that stuff so personally. He doesn't really mean anything by it." "He doesn't mean anything by it?" My 10-year-old son had his feelings crushed by his grandfather in front of the entire family, and she thought it was just Dad having a mood. He told me I should have stayed home in front of my kids. Jake made him a gift, and he acted like it was an inconvenience. Okay, yeah, that wasn't cool. But you know how he is about emotional stuff. Anyway, can we talk about the rent situation? Because I really need you to Venmo me the money today. It's $1,800 this month because my landlord raised it again. This place is getting so ridiculously expensive. But you know how it is in this market. I knew exactly how it was. Vanessa had been living in the same overpriced downtown loft for 3 years, a trendy one-bedroom in a converted warehouse that charged premium prices for exposed brick walls and industrial-style fixtures. The rent was astronomical for what she got, maybe 600 square feet, with paper-thin walls and a kitchen so small you could barely fit 2 people in it at the same time. But she loved being able to say she lived downtown, loved the address, loved being walking distance from all the trendy restaurants and bars she couldn't actually afford to frequent. She turned down multiple opportunities to move somewhere more reasonable because, in her words, I can't live in some suburban apartment complex like a college student. I have an image to maintain. For 3 years, I'd been her safety net, stepping in whenever she came up short on rent, which was pretty much every month. She'd always have some excuse. Her temp job ended unexpectedly. She had to buy new work clothes for an interview. Her car needed repairs. She'd gotten sick and missed work. There was always something. And I'd always felt obligated to help because that's what family does, right? I need you to find another way to pay your rent, Vanessa, I said, surprised by how calm my own voice sounded. What? David, come on. Don't be dramatic about this. It's just until I get this new job I'm interviewing for. You know I'm good for it. She'd been interviewing for new jobs for literally 2 years. The interviews were real enough. She was attractive and could be charming when she wanted to be. But she had a talent for finding reasons to reject any offer that didn't meet her increasingly unrealistic standards. Too early in the morning, not enough vacation time, the commute was inconvenient, the office dress code was too strict, the salary was insulting, the work was beneath her skill level. Meanwhile, she continued to live like she had a 6-figure income, getting her hair and nails done twice a month, buying new clothes she'd wear once for social media photos, and treating every weekend like a celebration that required expensive dinners and premium everything. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being realistic. You're 31 years old, Vanessa. Figure it out yourself. Are you serious right now? You're really going to let me get evicted over some family drama? I thought you were better than that, David. I thought family meant something to you. Family meant something to me. That's exactly why I was so hurt that none of them had stood up for my children yesterday, and why I was so tired of being treated like a walking ATM while getting no respect in return. Sell some of those designer handbags, I suggested, or maybe cut back on the salon visits until you find steady work. You don't understand what it's like trying to find a good job in this market. I have to look professional. I can't show up to interviews looking like I shop at discount stores. Other people manage to look professional without spending $300 on haircuts. Fine. I'll figure something out, but don't come crying to me when you need something and I'm not available to help. When had Vanessa ever helped me with anything? I tried to think of a single time she'd offered assistance, financial or otherwise, and came up empty. Even when Sarah and I were going through our divorce and I was struggling to keep everything together, Vanessa's contribution had been to offer fashion, advice, and suggest I should treat myself to new clothes to boost my confidence. I hung up before she could continue, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. For the first time, I'd said no to a family member's demand for money without feeling guilty about it, without immediately starting to second-guess myself and wonder if I was being too harsh. Later that afternoon, my mom called using what I'd learned to recognize as her concerned mother voice. A little softer than usual, with just a hint of worry that was designed to make you want to fix whatever was wrong. "Hi, sweetheart," she started. "I wanted to check in about that card situation. Is everything okay? Sometimes those banking apps can be confusing." Right to the money. Not a word about how my kids had felt yesterday. "The card's fine, Mom." I froze it intentionally. "Oh, a pause. Well, I'm sure you had your reasons, but speaking of money troubles, Ryan's truck broke down this morning. You know how he depends on that truck for work. It would mean so much to all of us if you could help him out with the repair costs. The mechanic says it'll be about $1,500. Ryan's truck. That beat-up old pickup he drove around pretending to be a contractor, even though his contracting work consisted of maybe one small job every few months. The truck that spent more time broken down than running because he refused to take care of it properly. "That's unfortunate," I said. "What does this have to do with me?" "Well, you've always been so good about helping when family needs it, and Ryan's really trying to get his business off the ground. This truck situation could really set him back." I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I asked the question I'd been wanting to ask all day, Mom. Why didn't anyone say anything about what Dad said to me and the kids yesterday? Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, David, you know your father. He was probably just having one of his moods. You shouldn't take those things so personally. Shouldn't take it personally? My father had essentially told me I wasn't welcome at a family gathering in front of my children, and I shouldn't take it personally. He hurt Jake's feelings, I said. Kids are resilient. Jake will be fine. That was the moment the switch flipped completely. Sitting there, listening to my mother dismiss my son's hurt feelings while simultaneously asking for $1,500, I finally saw the dynamic clearly. They could treat me however they wanted because they knew I'd always be there with an open wallet when they needed something, but it wasn't just about money, it was about respect, and they'd made it clear that I had none of theirs. After I hung up, I started thinking about all the money that had flowed out of my accounts over the years. The loans that were never repaid, the emergencies that were really just poor planning, the constant expectation that I'd cover whatever they couldn't or wouldn't pay for themselves. Vanessa alone owed me $2,000 from last year when she'd claimed she needed urgent dental work. I'd found out later through her social media post that she'd spent the money on a long weekend trip to Miami for some guy's birthday party. When I'd confronted her about it, she'd promised to pay me back as soon as she got her next job. That was 8 months ago. I decided right then that I was done being the family bank and I was going to start collecting on old debts. 2 days later, I was scrolling through social media during my lunch break when Vanessa's latest post popped up. Designer shoes, brand new, still in the box with a caption about treating yourself when life gets stressful. The shoes looked expensive. The kind of expensive that could probably cover a month of groceries for a family of 3. I screenshotted the post, then dug through my old text messages until I found what I was looking for. From 8 months ago, David, I swear I'll pay you back as soon as I can. You're literally saving my life right now. I owe you big time. I sent her a payment request through the banking app for exactly $2,000, along with the screenshot of her new shoes and her old promise to pay me back. Her response came within minutes. Are you serious right now? I didn't reply. She could figure out whether I was serious when she decided whether to pay me back or not. 3 hours later, my phone chimed with a payment notification, $2,000 deposited into my account. No message, no explanation, just the money, cold and transactional, which was exactly how I felt about our relationship at that point. With Vanessa's money, I did something I hadn't done in years. I planned something fun for just me and the kids, a week-long fishing and beach trip to the coast, complete with a charter boat rental and a cabin right on the water. Emma had been begging to try deep-sea fishing, and Jake was obsessed with finding perfect shells and sea glass. I booked everything that night. 4 days on the water with a local guide who promised we'd catch enough fish to feed an army, plus 3 days just relaxing on the beach. I arranged for the rental cabin to have a full kitchen so we could cook our catches each evening and eat like kings. The best part, I didn't tell anyone where we were going. I just informed my ex-wife that I'd be taking the kids on vacation during my custody week, handled the logistics and disappeared. No social media posts, no check-ins, no updates to family about our plans. I wanted them to wonder where I was and what I was doing. For once, they could be the ones left in the dark. We came back from our trip sunburned, exhausted, and completely happy. Emma had caught a 20-pound grouper that she wouldn't stop talking about. Jake had found a piece of sea glass that was perfectly smooth and blue-green like a jewel. We'd eaten fresh fish every night and fallen asleep to the sound of waves. It was the best week I'd had in years. The morning after we got back, my grandfather showed up at my door. Grandpa Joe had always been the steady, quiet presence in our family, the one person who never seemed to get caught up in drama or take sides in arguments. He was my dad's father, but somehow he'd managed to avoid inheriting the harsh edges that defined my father's personality. "Got time for some coffee?" he asked, holding up a thermos and a manila envelope. We sat on my back porch while the kids played in the yard, still riding the high from our beach adventure. Grandpa Joe watched them for a while, smiling at their energy before he turned serious. "I've been watching how they treat you," he said quietly. "Your parents, your siblings. I've been watching for years, actually, and what happened at that brunch was the last straw for me." I started to deflect. Old habits die hard, but he held up a hand. "Don't make excuses for them, David. I saw how your boy's face fell when your father said what he said. I saw how none of them stood up for you or those kids, and I've been watching you carry the financial load for this family while they treat you like you don't matter." He handed me the envelope. "I've made some changes to my will. Everything that was going to be split between your mother, Vanessa, and Ryan now goes to you and your children. The house, the savings accounts, the investment portfolio. It's about $400,000 total, plus the property. I stared at the envelope, not sure how to respond. Grandpa Joe, I can't. You can? And you will. You're the only one in this family who's earned it. You work hard. You take care of your kids, and you've been taking care of everyone else for years without getting anything but grief in return. This money will go to someone who will use it wisely and make sure those grandkids of mine have what they need. He stood up to leave, then paused. The lawyer will be contacting everyone next week to inform them of the changes. Thought you should know first. After he left, I sat on that porch for another hour watching Emma and Jake play and thinking about what had just happened. This wasn't about the money. Though I'd be lying if I said $400,000 wouldn't change our lives. It was about recognition. For the first time, someone in my family had acknowledged that I'd been carrying more than my share and that maybe, just maybe, I deserved something good in return. 3 days later, my phone started buzzing with a series of increasingly frantic messages from my family. They'd all been contacted by my grandfather's lawyer about the will changes. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. Vanessa sent a long text about how we'd always been close and should get together soon to work things out. Ryan called twice and left voicemails about wanting to clear the air, about some misunderstandings. My mom sent a series of messages suggesting family dinners and holiday plans, as if the past month hadn't happened. I deleted every message without responding. By the next month, the consequences of my financial withdrawal had started to cascade through my family's carefully constructed house of cards. Vanessa's social media presence told the story better than any conversation could have. The posts went from champagne brunches and designer outfit photos to increasingly creative ramen noodle recipes and cozy nights in that were obviously code for can't afford to go out anymore. Her downtown loft, it turned out, was way beyond her actual means without someone else covering the shortfalls. Ryan's truck got repossessed 2 weeks later. I only found out because my mom called crying, saying the bank was now coming after her for co-signing one of his business loans. Apparently, Ryan's latest entrepreneurial venture had involved borrowing money against his truck to fund some kind of online marketing scheme that had predictably collapsed. David, I know we haven't talked much lately, she said through her tears. But I'm really scared. They're saying I might lose the house if Ryan can't pay this loan back. I never thought CO signing would put me at risk like this. For just a moment, I felt the old familiar tug of guilt. This was my mother after all, and she was genuinely frightened. But then, I remembered her dismissive attitude about Jake's hurt feelings, her casual assumption that I'd hand over $1,500 for Ryan's truck, and years of being treated like a walking ATM. That's tough, Mom, I said. Maybe Ryan can sell some of his business equipment to help pay it back. David, please. I know you're upset about the brunch thing, but can't we put that behind us? I really need help here. The brunch thing. Like it was some minor disagreement about dinner plans. I hope you figure it out, I said, and ended the call. The most desperate attempt came from Vanessa a few weeks later. She sent a long text message that started with fake apologies and gradually devolved into full-scale begging. David, I know I haven't been the best sister lately, and I'm really sorry about that. I've been thinking a lot about family and how important it is that we stick together. I know you're probably still upset about the holiday brunch, and I get it. I really do. Dad was out of line. We all should have said something. Can you please help me out just this once? I swear on our grandparents' graves that I'll pay you back. I'm really struggling here, and I don't know who else to turn to. I promise things will be different going forward. I stared at that message for a long time, remembering all the other promises she'd made over the years, all the time she'd sworn things would be different, that she'd learned her lesson, that she just needed one more chance. Then I thought about those designer shoes she'd bought with money she claimed she didn't have just days after asking me to pay her rent. I sent back one sentence. Sell the shoes. She read the message immediately. She never replied. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about saying no. I didn't feel obligated to fix everyone else's problems or apologize for setting boundaries. I wasn't their crutch anymore, and the relief was overwhelming.